Hello, welcome to a bonus episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo, and this here is the long awaited episode of the podcast where essentially I will break down each of the episodes from season one, where I would share my thoughts and any behind the scenes related info. So before I do so, be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RD Movies Pod and subscribe to the podcast for updates. Let's begin. Drive. When deciding on the film to cover for this series premiere episode, this one for sure was at the top of the list. For one, it was celebrating its 10-year anniversary. So I thought, it was perfect timing to reminisce about this movie. And also, too, it was one of my favorite movies that not only came out during that year in 2011, but it's also one of my favorites of all time because I just loved everything about the movie, from like the visuals, the writing, the directing, the music for sure, and yeah, the casting. In hindsight, it would have been cool to do like a comparison between the book and the film, but I did like touch up on some notable differences. I think mainly that I recall is the casting with Irene's character. But I think for the most part, like the book and the film are pretty much similar. And when I did the Aftershow episode, this one was in the top 5 at like number 4 in terms of most listened to episodes. But as I'm recording this, it is currently at number 2. The Wedding Guest. This one was interesting to record. I think for one, it was mainly like my thoughts on the film. Because when I first saw the film back in 2020 during the pandemic, I thought, this is like, a decent thriller that, yes, has its flaws, but I enjoyed it mainly because of the premise, its use of thrills, and the cast. And when I rewatched it, it was pretty much the same, but I liked it a bit more. So it's one of those titles that will probably be more enjoyable on repeat viewings. And yeah, like it didn't have a lot of like quotable like moments, because when I was trying to find a quote to use for the prelude, I couldn't really find much. So I decided to went with the scene when Dev Patel's character kidnaps the bride. The Incredible Jessica James. The Incredible Jessica James has some quotable moments. So, for example, she says, I'm a cocoa queen, or I'm freaking dope. But for the prelude, I went with the quote where she tells Sandra, this is theater. We do it simply because we must, because that for me represented the film, like, because as an artist, trying to break in the industry, like, it was just nice to see that represented on screen. The romance aspect of the film was fine, but it could have been like experimented more to make it less predictable, which is kind of like the issue with a lot of rom-com movies. But overall, like, I still had fun with the film, and it's, for me, up there in terms of favorite Netflix original films. Dope. Dope is dope. Loved the vibes that this movie has in terms of the 90s culture, hip hop, the music, the fashion, and so forth, because the main characters have a love for that era. So that was kind of just refreshing to see on screen. Even though it's set during modern times, that was very appreciated for a person, myself, that loves the 90s. It was a challenge to find the original songs that the characters play in the movie for Instagram for marketing, but I wasn't too frustrated at the end of the day because I used the licensed songs that were featured in the film. It was mind blowing, like when I saw the film, like the crossover it has with the director's previous film, The Wood, which was through the security guard in this film. So it'll be interesting if there is an interest that there could be either limited series or a film that focuses on those group of characters from The Wood many years later. And who knows, characters from Dope could be also in the mix. Empire Records. Damn the man, save the empire. Empire Records. Still can't believe that I saw this film prior to the recording, and then I realized it while I was recording that I saw this film before. It was either I saw the film prior to recording the episode, or maybe saw like some promos on TV, but really it felt similar when I was recording that episode. This film makes me miss like the 90s and the 2000s when like record stores were huge. Like especially for me, like, going to HMV like was cool because you get to listen, to the records through their stereos and like see all like the films and the CDs and the LPs that were available. And I love like the music choices in this film. Like it has like an alternative slash like indie pop vibe to it, which makes sense because with Empire Records, it's primarily like a store that doesn't sell a lot of like mainstream music. Begin again. Out of all of the episodes from this season, this one was the most frustrating to record, mainly because of the production value. So I first recorded the episode at my house, but had so much construction happening in the background. So then I decided I'll record it outside in a natural environment. So I went to a park. So because I was inspired by the film where Keira Knightley's character decides to record her album outdoors to hear the sounds of New York. So that was, my inspiration to record outside. But with that one, there was so much noise happening in the background with the people and the waterfalls, and it was so windy outside. So I'm like, screw this. I am going to re record this episode at my home, despite the noise that's happening with construction and all of that, and just try to edit this episode as much as possible. So if that was a distraction from listening to the episode, I apologize. But anyway, so back to begin again. I still stand by my thoughts that this is better than Once, but I do understand why like people love Once. I think for me, mainly is because I saw Begin Again more than once, which is why I liked it more. But I have like an appreciation for once with what people liked about the film. And with this one too, like even though like Lost Stars was like the like song in the film, similar to like how Shallow was like the song from A Star Is Born, I would also consider like other tracks from the film as well. The Assistant. With The Assistant, I felt like it was the first episode of the podcast where I felt truly in my comfort zone. The previous episodes were quite nerve wracking. Well, I still had fun with it, but they were quite nerve wracking mainly because of the production side to it. I still have like moments where I feel quite nervous because I am quite shy, like slash an introvert, but I would say like I am like an introvert slash extrovert when I am in my comfort zone. Another reason why this episode was quite comforting was because of the themes in the film in terms of the workplace, how people are treated, and also to the themes of Me Too. I recorded the episode during the IATI strike, or the film crew strike, which for me as a person wanting to get into the film industry felt strongly about. Parallels with that in the film were on point, and it's something that people could relate to regardless of the industry that they work in. The writing and the directing in this movie is solid, and Julia Garner delivers a stellar performance. The pacing and the one location could put off some viewers, but overall it's worthwhile to watch. Monsters. Monsters is one of my favorite episodes to record with this season of the podcast. As a sci fi fan, it's refreshing to see more grounded, low key films in the genre because it shows that you do not need spectacle or huge CGI to engage the audience. Just have a well crafted or well developed plot, characters, and themes that'll resonate with the audience. I'm not surprised at the end that this one is the most listened to, probably because it has the mainstream appeal without going to mainstream, if that makes sense. And I guess there's probably a lot of sci-fi fans out there that are more interested to see films in this genre shown in a different way that's outside of mainstream. I still haven't seen the direct DVD sequel of this film, and I do not plan to in the foreseeable future. Colossal. I didn't expect this one for me to be quite divisive in terms of my thoughts on the film, because usually with the films that I choose for the podcast, like I am very certain that it should be recommended for the audience. And I guess like yeah, with this one I did appreciate, the concept, the performances from the actors, and how like it was shown through a different lens similar to Monsters, but the execution of the film for me was disappointing. I don't know if it had to do like with the tone, because it was trying to be like a disaster film, but mixed in like with the melodrama of the main characters and the dark humor. And there were some issues with certain plot points of the film. I bet some of you are wondering, why did I choose this film for the podcast? Well, I think for me, yeah, like it had that high concept that you would see in the mainstream movie. I think that's mainly why I chose this film for the podcast. But Maybe I'll like it over time more, but it's just how I feel about it now. I feel conflicted, if that makes sense. Idiocracy. Idiocracy is a hilarious movie that resonates with the politics and behavior of society, which is concerning. I'm not surprised that with this episode, it's also one of the most listened to episodes of the podcast because this movie, after its initial release, got a lot of love and attention. It does a great job with the satire, the cast delivered with their performances, and the director did an amazing job. And I'm glad that this movie got made despite its circumstances during its theatrical release. I don't like to talk politics mainly because that's stressful enough, but the parallels with the current politics and with the movie are on point. This concludes this episode and season 1 of the podcast. I would love to know, what are your thoughts on season 1? What are your favorite memories from the show? Or how about the movies themselves that were covered? To share your thoughts, you could reach out on social media, either Twitter or Instagram at rdmoviespod. You could email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, or send a short voice note on anchor.fm/rdmoviespod. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast and for your support. Season 2 is coming soon. Be sure to subscribe for updates.